not going to be at all. Good evening, everyone. We'll get our meeting started. Vice President White had an emergency, so he may or may not be here this evening, but we will certainly wish him well in whatever is going on with his family. So, but good evening. Can I get someone, Commissioner Powell, would you do the Pledge of Allegiance for us, please? All right. Thank you, Commissioner Powell. There are no minutes, so we'll go on to the speakers list. Cynthia Clay. All right. Sandra Kern. Come on up. It's right there. Good evening.
Good evening. I've never done this before, so if I'm breaking any protocol rules, please let me know.
You have 3 minutes, I believe it is.
Okay. I am here before you because I live in the city. My daughter attends school in the city, Nazareth Elementary, which is a Catholic school. My grandmother, who is the person that can help me with childcare after school, lives in Greece. And there's 2 school buses that go from Nazareth Elementary to Greece. But my daughter cannot get in any of those buses because her address is in the city. Now, I've done some research to see if I can request for this, and the things that I have learned is that the New York state law does not prevent the school district to transport the pupil outside of the district, but it is to you guys' discretion if this will be allowed. Another thing is that through the district policy manual, I was reading through it, and even if I wanted to pay a private bus company, let's say, to transport my daughter, I wouldn't be allowed because it needs to go through like the district. And I've also learned that there's a way that if a neighboring district gives the city of Rochester services, there's a way that they sort of like can invoice us for it, and then the city can pay for it back. Like they've done with health services and that type of thing. So what I'm asking you to consider is that there's already 2 buses that take that route. So if you were to pay for the services of transporting my daughter, it wouldn't be like an extraordinary burden on Greece because they already have bus routes that do that. And I also want to keep in mind that I live in the city. I like living in the city. I love the fact that my daughter is attending, I'm Puerto Rican, so for her to go to a school that has a very diverse background is very important to me, and Nazareth does offer that, and I like that. And also because she's staying in school over 9 hours, which is, I'm paying for extended care services, which is more than we expect from an adult to spend at work. And I also have to pay like an extra $400 for extended care services because I cannot put her on the bus, which is a burden on me because other taxpayers have access to bus transportation that I don't. And that's my request. So,
Thank you.
I'm not sure how do I go after this?
I'm going to ask the Deputy Superintendent for Administration to refer her to her. She's sitting right there, and she can follow up with you about that. You're welcome. Thank you. I'm seeing that there are no reports for the Advisory Council, so we will go right into the Superintendent report. Superintendent Nelms?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thanks. I have a somewhat brief report today. I'm going to go through some celebrations that are happening at this point in the year at East, and then I'm going to end with A financial update. I know there were some questions and requests from the board to hear more about East. We've done that, throughout, the past year or so, but I wanted to give the current board members and the new board members an opportunity to just kind of revisit some of the funding parameters around East and some of the progress associated with it. But let's start with great news. East is representing the city tomorrow at Hobart and William Smith College for the Section 5 championship versus Canandaigua. It's at 7 p.m. Just going to invite the board and the community to come out and cheer on our students. It's in Geneva because it's the neutral site, so they choose these sites ahead of time. I would have loved to be somewhere closer to the city, but it is not. However, through some generosity of some local funders, the brothers from Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity and Gamma Iota Boulé, they have purchased all the tickets for students to attend and their families. And we also are going to have 3 school buses at this point. I think we have 200 kids signed up to attend the game from East, and so that cost will be covered. And if you want to come on out and cheer on the boys, feel free to do so. But we encourage the entire community to come out and support. I think we're the last team in the city in the championship. Sadly, Wilson and UPrep lost last week, but we wish all the athletes well and support them. But East is the last of the city, so come on out and support those individuals. And for the alumni, I want to thank you for traveling to Fairport last week. We probably had 100 alum come out and cheer on the kids in the cold last week. They made noisemakers and signs, and these are folks who did not have kids in the school, but felt a lot of pride in East. And so we encourage them and others to come on out for that game and the board as well.
What day is that on?
It's tomorrow at 7 p.m.
Friday, okay.
Friday at 7 p.m. at Hobart and William Smith College. If you want to attend and you want to go in the sidelines, let me know. I'll put you on the VIP list. For the board members, not the community, I can't put everybody on the sidelines, but for the board members, I can do that. We get a +1? It depends on who you are. No, I can get you to go. This 2 weeks ago, I attended the Council of Great City Schools Conference. And it was an incredible, that's I think one of the best conferences because the focus is squarely on our kids in urban settings. Attended a few sessions, mostly focused around equity, university school partnerships, board governance, and how do we create agency and communication student voice. And then we were also encouraged to support and be a part of the Colleges of Education meeting and encouraged to apply for the Dr. Shirley Swartz Award. And this award goes to school districts and universities who are partnering to do transformative work. And I believe what the board has allowed us to do at East, support those students, should be acknowledged and commended across the country because it's definitely, we as a community, it means the board and East and the RCSD are doing some incredible things and people are wanting to hear more about it. I want to thank our staff and our community volunteers for participating in last week's East Ave Grocery Run. This is a run that raises funds for our food pantry in partnership with FoodLink. As you know, our food pantry was created 3 years ago when students identified their hunger needs and families. And we partner with FoodLink, and I will tell you that probably every 2 weeks we have to replenish the entire food pantry. So kids are taking advantage of that. If you've been there, you'll see that there are canned goods and there's pasta, and then what our community liaison did is they created menus. So they'll say if you grab pasta and you grab peppers and you grab sauce, you can make this type of pasta meal. And they have the calorie counts. And they try to keep a really healthy environment, but also teaching our kids how to cook and how to use the canned goods and groceries to their advantage. This Friday, if you can't make it to the football game and you want to come indoors, this Friday is a music technology showcase. Our music department does this every single year, probably twice. They have students who are in music tech classes and they showcase the music that they've created. So you have they're creating, like, they make musical beats, and you have an opportunity to kind of give feedback on that. But it's from 1 to 3:30 in the music suite. Our music department is absolutely incredible. They have done an amazing job of recruiting youth into chorus and band and orchestra. And I'm glad to announce that this year we have the largest band in quite some time. Our lower school kids are totally involved in what's happening. We purchased a lot of band equipment over the last 4 years, and it's good that kids are actually using them and playing them. And so I encourage the board, if you can't make it out at night, you want to come indoors when it's warm. Friday, November 8th from 1 to 3:30 is a music showcase. And the kids, this is open to the community as well. We'll have a lot of folks coming in and out, listening to the work of our students and what they're producing. In recognition of Board Appreciation Week, I've given each of the board members a book, How to Be Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi. It's an incredible text. His first book was Stand from the Beginning. It's probably 3 times the size of this book, so I kind of gave you the shorter version to start with. But Dr. Kendi walks us through how our own implicit bias has, at times, caused us to not take action around policy, to inform practice and beliefs, as people that are in positions to do so. So it's a self-reflective book on his journey towards becoming an anti-racist. You'll hear him say that being a non-racist isn't good enough. You have to be an anti-racist. You have to be willing to lose something to gain what's right for kids and what's right for this community. And I think it was a book that will resonate with each of you. Dr. Kendi, it will also be in Rochester on Monday, November 18th at 7 p.m. at the Hochstein Music Hall. And the students from East will be serving as moderators and participants in that discussion as well. So again, we encourage, this is for the entire community. It's through the Frederick Douglass Family Initiatives, but it's a great event, and it's good to see the author of the book that you have. As part of year 5, moving into hopefully a few more years with the EPO, we established the Technical Assistance Center, and so I'm going to provide updates frequently to the board about its impact thus far. We've had 4 local school districts come out already this year to learn about curriculum, our curriculum work, restorative practices literacy, and also family group that happened this week. And then nationally, there's an interest around the work we're doing. Again, I mentioned the Council of Great City Schools. There'll be teachers at the American AERAs for Research one, talking about the hip hop course that was created with students participating in that discussion. Model Schools is really interested in the literacy work. For those who attended the Literacy Symposium, you are aware of how the use of Re 180 and college professors and teacher voice has created some incredible results in our kids moving who enter 6th or 7th grade, well below proficient, making great strides. And we're seeing the impact of that on our performance on ELA assessments at 11th grade. So we're starting to see the investment in our literacy teachers and reading teachers in lower school having a tremendous impact on graduation rates at the upper school. So I will continue to update you on the work of the Technical Assistance Center. A lot of this information a lot of these conferences locally and nationally are sponsored by those companies or individuals because they're interested in the work themselves. So I don't want to give the impression that we're all over the place, all over the country. These are individuals who are really interested in the work, and we're sending teams of teachers and students, and we actually sent parents last year to talk about community engagement, which is really important through a grant. The next few slides is I want to talk about graduation and our rates and also the cost. Because if you all recall, 3 years ago, an erroneous number was published in the Democrat and Chronicle that the per pupil cost at East was $36,000 per kid. And although we've explained this probably ad nauseum to you all, that number has stuck. And so I'm hoping that we can once again walk the community through the actual cost per student at East, but also make sure that we understand the programmatic implications and how it relates to cost. Some people call that return on investment. That's a very scary thing to kind of compare money and kid outcomes. So I'm not gonna use return on investment, but what it really is like, what are we actually paying for? So if you look at this graduation analysis, we often talk about the per pupil cost, but I think it's also important to focus on what is the cost for a graduate and for our investment. So if you look at the 2015-16 school year, the cost per pupil at East was about $22,000. However, only 33% of the kids graduated. And so if you look at that, the total cost per graduate was about $67,000. And so I'm not gonna give you the number for the kids who didn't graduate, but you can imagine how big a cost that is, especially if those kids moved into 5th and 6th year in high school. And this is for 1 year, this is for one cohort. So if you think about this number times 4 over 4 years, what the total investment may be, you'll get a clearer sense of of the importance of graduation and what we invest in our youth. You can probably further that conversation and say, and what is the impact of those 67% of kids who did not graduate on our society, knowing that they're leaving likely less employable? And so what's happening to those students in their lives moving forward from the time they leave high school until later on in life? Then if you fast forward to 2018-19, where the per pupil cost is about $26,683, not 36, you'll see the cost per graduate is less because we're graduating more students. So I share this with the board because I think it's important when we talk about programmatic cuts, we talk about budget, that we actually understand how the dollars are being used and what's the impact on the children in their lives. And so these are kids who are graduating employable, they're graduating, going to college, they're graduating into the workforce, but more importantly, they have a piece of paper, a degree, that allows them a different access and a different place in this world. And so I think that when we think about this and you tie it to attendance rates, you tie it to literacy rates and math rates, the investment in the upfront cost may be a much greater benefit than paying for it on the back end. We also see the impact of graduation rates on the next slide, the impact of success on the use of summer school. So what we found is that when you give kids adequate resources to support them with the social emotional support, support them with literacy and numeracy, they are graduating at higher rates and they're requiring less summer school support, which means they're able to work over the summer, they're able to participate in sports over the summer or in clubs and activities, and that's also an important cost to the district also. And so I want to walk you through the programmatic outcomes of investing heavily in youth up front and how it impacts the rest of the budget and the rest of their success moving forward. And then as a reminder, I want to share that these are the efficiencies that were returned to the district over the past, since starting in 2015-16, over the last 4 years. At the end of each of those years, these were the numbers that we presented to the board and to the finance department, funds that were used in other parts of the system. And these funds were helpful. We worked with the finance department and Barb and Everton and that team to, well in advance, let them know what we projected for a return so they can use those dollars strategically. And so the average return per year in the beginning was about $4 million because of grant funds and because of efficiencies and we to help offset the cost of the district. But the next slide, I think, is equally as important. If you recall, at the last year's budget session, we decided instead of having those dollars be used by the district in reserves, that we would make those funds available at the beginning of the year as a permanent cut. And so for this school year, East has already returned $2.2 million to the district. And so how those dollars are being used, Terry and I will discuss. He's aware of these numbers also. I think he's trying, he's doing his due diligence to see how the funds were being used. But this year, we've already cut 10% of our budget as a permanent cut for this year moving forward. What's the impact of this? When we give dollars back to the district, it lowers the per pupil cost at East, and it may raise it in other places, or there has to be strategic decisions of how those dollars are going to be used. And I think that's something that will come out of the budget analysis and decisions being moving forward. I also know that at the beginning of our EPO, there were a lot of, or some buzz in the community about the cost of University of Rochester. I even heard one person say University of Rochester is making $5 million off this project. I don't know where the heck that number came from. But the original number was only $913,000, and you know that we've been reducing that over the last 4 years, and it currently stands at $516,000, and that's primarily in education support, our consultants, supporting us with curriculum, supporting us mostly with curriculum, to be honest with you, and partial salaries for folks like Steve, very small part of their salary. And we anticipate as we build out the curriculum, we'll have less reliance on the University of Rochester and other consultants, and that number will continue to decrease. And just a few more slides. It's also equally important to note that our 2015-16 budget was actually higher than our current budget for the EPO. And that includes the contractual increases. So as teachers got increases or administrators received increases, we kept finding efficiencies and trying to balance those increases against the actual budget. And so I know we've explained this in different board meetings, but I wanted to make it crystal clear that the cost of East is not increasing, it's actually decreasing. And we've done that because we've been able to, because the more kids that are being successful, the less teachers we need for remediation. Meaning if kids are not being held back, then you don't have to keep increasing teachers to teach those kids in their 5th and 6th year of high school. So in summary, we have returned over $16 million over the last 4 years. That we know that the cost of graduates and investing up front is a positive return for the district. We know that we are actually spending less now than we did in 15-16 for our proposed budget. We know that the per pupil cost was grossly overstated some years ago. We hope that that narrative changes and that it more accurately reflects the good work happening at East and the investment that this board put for us. And I think it's also important to note that the impact on kids graduating and being ready for life beyond high school is probably the greatest return that we could provide those students. So there are future considerations are to increase enrollment if we move past this year. So we're hoping to gain more students at each of our grade levels. Just remember that 1/3 of our building is under construction. That's the reason why we haven't expanded enrollment. We're functioning in 2/3 of the East building. That with a feeder pattern, we are better able to support and predict what kids are coming into the school. That's why School 33 was so important to us, or other schools in the community. And that we are continuing to reduce our reliance on the University of Rochester and other consultants as we build capacity within our own school. So I gave you a lot there, but I think it's really important that I give the board accurate information, so when you're questioning the community about the cost of East, that you're better able to explain it and/or send those individuals to me to do so. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Are there any questions for the superintendent? Commissioner LeBron?
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. I didn't want to interrupt while you were giving your presentation, so I just kind of wrote them down on slides. So on slide number 7, just the Technical Assistance Center. I know when we were discussing this before during this year's renegotiations and conversations about extension, it was my understanding that the Technical Assistance Center would support other schools within the district. And I see that you said 4 local school districts. So I just need to understand if any of the other schools within the district have utilized the Technical Assistance Center.
So this summer, we met with 4 high schools and 3 high schools
From
and
our
1 elementary.
district?
Yeah, from our district.
Okay.
And to go over the APPR process. School 15 visited recently for family group, to learn more about family group. There are several principals who've reached out to ask questions about the work that we're doing. Again, we don't have, so the invitation is open. And we have said no to anyone. We have not said no to anyone who've asked to come over. Let me put it that way. Yeah.
Oh, can I?
Yes.
Okay. On slide 8.
Yep.
So this graduate analysis.
Yep.
So first and foremost, let me just say, I actually want to further digest this information and a little bit deeper with some other stuff. So I have some questions today, but I will send you more official questions as well through the board log. So this cost analysis piece with the graduation rate, early college also gets less money than East, and they have a 91% graduation rate. All City, which I actually think All City, and it is one of the schools I'm a liaison for, but on the budget and on the books, they are one of our lowest. They have the lowest amount of money for high school students that we pay. Like, we give them almost nothing. They're on like bare bones budget, but they also have a higher graduation rate. So in my mind, I want to understand how all of this fits. And so, Sean, you may not be aware, but I have asked for this board to consider asking East for $5 million back based on our current budget deficit. And I do see that in your budget presentation, this slide is not numbered, so maybe 10, the historical efficiencies returned, that you guys do give money back. The problem is that when it's given at the end of the year, it's money that we as a school district can't depend on until after it's returned. And coming from non-for-profits and grants, and in the grant world and non-for-profit, if you don't use it, you lose it. And historically, like, the less you use, right, the more you have to return. The next year, you can't make a request for that amount because you didn't need it the year before. So I know that this has been a practice of the district. It's just, for me, it's a little bit backwards, and maybe because I'm just used to, again, the use it or lose it mentality of the non-for-profit world. But I am asking for this board to consider minimally $5 million back from East. So I appreciate that there are things that you guys have done and historically returned money, but unfortunately, I don't feel like we're in a situation where we can continue as is with East, even with some money coming back. And the board has not decided, and I don't think the request can come from Superintendent Terry Dade, because this is it's not his school. So this is your school. So I want to put this out there and have it on the record. Because unfortunately, as you know, we have a deficit, and I know that deficit, $30 million on the rest of the school district, when East is costing us more than $20 million. I just feel like this board really needs to take a hard look at that.
So, I mean, I think that's a board decision, so I won't comment on that. I will say that I think when there are arbitrary numbers mentioned without programmatic impact implications or understanding, I think that's we have to be more thoughtful, not saying you recommend you individually, but I think as a district, when we're talking about making budgetary cuts, we have to also have that conversation coupled with what are the programs that will be impacted by that. So if I were to cut every reading teacher and every math specialist and every teacher leader, or stop doing curriculum work, then the district East will return back to where it was when we arrived, which was having a 19% graduation rate. So I think we have to really be thoughtful about what those dollars actually mean, and I'm more than happy to have that conversation. And at the end of the day, the board has to decide as a collective unit around that decision. I don't know where the number 5 million came from. I will also say that All City receives less funding because those kids are also counting in the school's budget that they're coming from. So that number for All City, there are dollars within the schools of the kids that, so if you're an East kid attending All City, you still are counted in the East budget also. So that's probably explains why All City gets a lower amount of money.
Yeah, but the school gets to keep that funding. So I'm just going to throw a hypothetical number, $15,000 that the state gives us for that student. All City will get about $3,000 to $4,000. The rest of the funding for that year stays within the home school. So I've had this conversation with our principal there around that.
Whenever you have a special program like that, then kids are often double counted. So for example, you look at, what's the alternative school, Links or New Beginnings, right? When a kid goes to New Beginnings from East, and then they are there, we're still paying for them at East. When they come back, they're still in East books. You don't lose the funding. Like the funding doesn't go with the kid, because it's a district program.
The home school doesn't lose the funding, but All City doesn't get the funding for it. They get a portion of that funding.
Right.
So I think this conversation.
It's a programmatic decision you have to make. So I think it's an alternative program.
You're not going to solve it right
we're not going to solve it here.
And I can't answer. I mean, so my goal is not to justify what East gets against other schools, because one could argue that other schools may need more additional funding. And what I do know is the way in which the budget was provided in the past in explaining the per pupil cost, it was inaccurate. And we know that. We brought that up. And so it was inaccurate in that when you use average salaries and you use different funding mechanisms, when you put more on a budget in one school and you don't apply it to other schools, there's a bunch of funding things that they have to work out. And I mentioned that for the last...
Yeah, but doesn't the state also does the calculations per pupil the same way?
No, the district will provide a budget number to the state. And so they usually use a projected number. So the original number that was $36,000 was a number that was given from the district to the state. And if you were on the board then, 2 years ago, the chief financial officer clarified for the board that number was a projected number and was never intended to be used for a per pupil allocation. So I'm just saying, like, you're asking a question, I'm gonna answer it. So that what I know has to happen is we have to create and find a formula that accurately reflects the amount of dollars or money that is being spent in each school. And so all I can do is account for East and give you the numbers that we have that's been verified by the financial office here. And I would say that before we make any comparisons to schools, we have to make sure that those numbers are actually represent what's being expended in those schools yearly.
So what's your next step in terms of this conversation?
So I think for me, I want the board to start having this conversation because I know that Superintendent Terry Day is going to be presenting. And what I would say is that, Sean, while I hear what you're saying, that I said the same thing to Terry. Any cuts we make in any of the district at this point, I do believe are going to have some type of implication somewhere along the way. And I do want us to be very strategic and think about long-term implications and consequences to any of the decisions, but the reality is that we're still in a hole and we got to get out of the hole. And so, $5 million at one school, yes, is going to have some implications. I understand that. But $30 million across the district, across multiple schools, will also have consequences. I don't think we're in any shape in a good spot at all. Right? So let me just say this. I feel like whatever decisions we make, someone is going to get hurt. Someone is going to feel the consequences of the deficit. So again, I think the next steps is for the board on Tuesday when we hear from Superintendent Terry Dade, that we also then have a discussion about cuts at East.
Commissioner Shepherd?
And I just wanted some clarification because I wasn't sure if you were answering this question, so I'll just ask it directly. But on multiple pages, you had talked about a number that was overstated a couple years ago, about 36,000, and then you said that our CFO had explained that it was a projected number and not meant to be used. But it was the official number that was provided by the district. And so my question is, what was that projected? How was that projected? How did they even come up with that number?
So I think that would be a better question for those who calculated it. But I do know from speaking with the former superintendent and the former CFO that it was a total number of the budget divided by every kid in the district based on average salary and then provided, which as you can imagine, causes gaps in funding, and it's hard. You can't balance an actual budget based on projections and averages. It's impossible, right? So I believe, and I think what's probably best at this point is to let the financial audit take shape, allow Terry to get that information, and then make his recommendations. I only feel comfortable speaking about East, although I've been involved in conversations for 4 or 5 years in some capacity. But I will say that if you recall, I pointed this out for several years that the budget represented at East was inaccurate. And we tried to do it in the most respectful and the most transparent way without causing any waves. And I agree that we all have to do our part in supporting the budget deficit. And again, we've done it already this year with $2.2 million. We can continue to look for those numbers. And we have already kind of put a thaw on spending at East to make sure that we're only purchasing what's absolutely necessary for instruction. But I think that, I think for us to, at this point, suggest any arbitrary number without actually knowing what the true cost is and what Terry's plans are, I think is just premature. And so that's why I'm reluctant to answer those questions. But the budget itself, those numbers that were given, it was given on some very flawed assumptions. And I think it's kind of why we're at where we're at now in a situation, because we're not looking at the revenue and expenditure side of the budget when deciding how to calculate per pupil expenses. I also mentioned to the board that for the last 4 years, there were dollars placed in each budget that we didn't use. For example, parts of employee salaries that we didn't benefit from. And we brought those things out. So we were working behind the scenes with Barb and the CFO around these issues. And so I don't want to speak ill of people who are not here, because that's not my intent. And I will say that each of those individuals responded in ways that satisfied the discussion in saying this is not what it was intended for. What did not happen is it was never publicly corrected. And so, except by me. And so I think that this is an opportunity just to anchor the board back into the real numbers, and also to explain impact. And then it's up to the board to make a decision how they see fit. But what I did not want the board to do is to enter any discussion about East without hearing from me, because that hasn't really happened yet, and without having the accurate information. I think that's really important also.
Any other questions for or comments to Superintendent Nelms?
I do have one final question. So when we do start talking about planning and cuts across the district, however the board majority wants to do in regards to presenting on what East is going to do in particular, are we wanting to have Sean and Terry come for, like, or what was your thought on that?
My thought?
Oh, no, sorry. I was specifically talking to Commissioner Brown.
So I think first I would like Terry to present where he's going to pull some cuts from. And again, I get it, Sean. Like, I don't want to say like we should be cutting $5 million from East. But on the flip side, everyone in this district is feeling the implications of this. And I don't know how far, how deep, or where he's going to be looking at, because we're going to find out as a board at the same time that the public finds out. I believe it's the next finance meeting is next Tuesday, and that's when the conversation and the presentation is going to happen. I've brought this up to my colleagues already about East and us looking to take some cuts at East. But you have not been a part of those conversations, so I did want to make sure that you knew that was that's my request. I don't want Sean to present with Terry. I think Terry has the lift enough as it is to present what 30 million across the district will look like. And I do believe that there may be cuts that this board won't support. So we have to have some type of conversations about what our backup is going to be if we as a board don't decide a certain program or agency. I don't know. I don't know what all the presentations are going to be about again, but I do know that there are going to be consequences for anything that we cut. There's going to be some type of consequence, unfortunately. And we're feeling some of that right now with the transportation for extended learning. Like, we have ELT programs that we can't provide transportation for, and nobody knew that was coming down the pipeline. And it's impacting all of our extended learning students and families, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, well, I guess I think that having Terry give his, first of all, hearing the audit, the full report, and once he gets those numbers and we know the true number, and having his plan be articulated. He and I have been in conversation, we'll continue to speak, and he knows that we're willing to support however we can based on his plan. But I just don't want it lost on the board that, it seems like, we are going to do our fair share based on what Terry decides and what the board agrees to. But I just want to be clear that we have been fiscally prudent and responsible from the day one at East. And so I think, although we're all going to feel the pinch, I think it would be unfair for us to take the brunt, so $5 million of the $30 million hit, for doing what we are supposed to do, and that's being fiscally prudent. And the only reason why those dollars are given back at the end of the year is because that's how Barbara and her team preferred it. And so those numbers were always made present, always made available. We presented those numbers at every finance meeting in those years, let them know what the anticipated return would be. And then we decided that, quite frankly, to your point, I didn't want to hold on to that. And so we said, here's $2.2 million for the beginning of 2019-20 as a permanent cut, which again is 10% of our budget, because we knew that would be important. We didn't know there would be a fiscal issue, but we knew that was better to have that up front. And so none of us anticipated this budget issue. Sure, we can look back and see there were signs of things that could have happened, but the reality is none of us anticipated this. We're all in this together. But I just want to say that I caution that we not throw out arbitrary numbers, A, before we understand what the true budget nature is, 2, without having a comprehensive plan to reduce the budget, not just this year, because the big hit will be next year. And then 3, making sure we understand the programs that will be impacted by those cuts. And so my ask would be from this board and from the community is to not suggest numbers publicly until we actually know the issues at hand, and until Terry can give his report, so we can be thoughtful about it and be supportive of the final recommendation. And I don't want to spend between now and the 12th debating in the community a number that I don't know, a number that I can't explain, without it coming from the collective board or from the superintendent himself. I think it's a fair request.
I just want to add, though, that I'm making the request specifically for 5. You guys do get significantly more than any other of our high schools, and none of our high schools have a superintendent and their own cabinet and so forth. We have one superintendent and a cabinet for the entire district, and then we have East. And for me, I want to be realistic about that. And you don't need to explain the number. You can just say Commissioner LeBron picked that number, and it has not been decided by the full board, so there's no need for that. But I do want to, again, stress that while it will have implications at East, this $30 million deficit and the cuts that Terry has to present are going to have implications on the entire school district. Everyone's going to have, unfortunately, some type of consequences to address. And I know Terry's working very hard to minimize that across our schools and how they feel it, but they're all going to feel it, the entire district. So I just want to throw that out there. And I sympathize, again, with you guys, but I have to sympathize with the rest of our schools, too.
Commissioner Shepard?
So I just wanted to make this suggestion as well. So the work that was done around figuring out what it costs to graduate a student in 4 years versus 5 and 6, I think that actually is an excellent way to approach like what we do as a board, because a lot of the things that we do are reactive, and this is a proactive way to see like where we can save money. And I know you don't want to say return on investment, but it does help us figure out where to navigate funds. So I did want to put out the suggestion, and I'll bring it up again when Superintendent Date is around, that the rest of the district follow kind of whatever formula you did or how your team was able to come to this number, that we would use the same thing to do it for the rest of our schools, and even figure out how we could make this number work even in our elementary and at the middle school level in regards to what would be needed per pupil there to make sure they're on grade level and proficiency rates there. So this was actually excellent work that I was glad to see, because I never really thought about even doing something like this. So thank you for that.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Nelms? First of all, I want to thank Vice President Elliott for stepping in. I appreciate that. Sometimes life happens and you just have to respond to it, so I appreciate you stepping in there. Next item on the agenda is consideration of resolutions. The first set of resolutions that we should consider are 441 East EPO resolutions relating to appointment of a professional to a tenure area. Can I get a motion to discuss resolution 441?
So moved.
And moved by Commissioner Powell, seconded by?
I'll second.
Commissioner LeBron. Any questions or comments regarding resolution 441?
I think there's 411. The number is 411.
Oh, it's 411?
Yeah.
Okay, all
On
right.
this sheet is 441, though.
No, I understand.
Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you. Commissioner Davis, were you just asking a question about the correct number?
Right, I was trying to
All right,
understand.
thank you very much. Yes, that is, I appreciate you catching that. It's 441. Commissioner Powell?
Is this
411.
411?
Yep.
Is, Dr. Nelms, is this a replacement of an existing culinary arts retirement?
Yeah, so he was a teacher assistant. He was receiving his permanent teaching certification. And so since the culinary program is a unique program, we're trying to build capacity in that program. So when Chef Cristiano retires in the next year or so, we have a hard time finding culinary certified teachers in education.
Oh, so you're anticipating an overlap for the remainder of the year, and then if Chef Jeff retires, then he'll take over
And
that.
we've also expanded that program to do more community events also and supporting. So we had the kids expanding the program to be a 4-year robust program. And so there are more sections for that program than we have Jeff being able to teach.
Thank you.
Jeff being able to teach.
Vice President
Yeah,
Elliott?
I would just say, Mr. Superintendent, that in light of the conversation that we just had, is this a position that, and I know what you just said about it's hard to, but we just had this kind of thorough discussion around budget, and if we already have a person currently, do we need to have this person at the moment, is my thinking. But you did indicate that it can be difficult finding someone that has this background. But in the back of my mind is the budget, our budget and stuff. So,
He's also a teaching assistant currently at East.
okay.
So he's already employed at East and already working there. So this would be, like I said, Joe has his current salary, but it wasn't as drastic of a difference as it was being a teaching assistant. So he's been working there. Been there for 2 years now. I can get I can get his actual salary to look at the comparison, but it's not a brand new position. It's converting his one position into another.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner Davis.
Also, you said in your communication that you were already understaffed in the culinary
Because the
area.
program's expanding,
Yeah.
so more interest from kids than they are sections. We only have one teacher that can do it.
So you did need another
Yeah,
person.
yeah, it's growing.
I just wanted to note that Vice President Elliott, and although I came in the tail end of the prior conversation, makes a good point, and it doesn't seem to, it wouldn't prevent me from voting in favor of this particular position, given the circumstances that you described. But, maybe this is the kind of conversation that we should be having, perhaps in addition to the dais, but at our meetings where we look at these resolutions in advance, and those are good questions asked. Now, again, I don't think it applies to this particular person, but, maybe it's a person-by-person analysis. And I know that Terry is looking at that issue, and that's why I'm waiting. I do want to make an observation, not a correction, but it's my expectation that the board will not be seeing Terry's plan on the day of the meeting. When the gavel is noted for the beginning of that meeting. We should be getting that, and I don't see Anne Marie or Terry here, but I'll make sure it gets communicated to him on behalf of the board. We should be seeing that plan at least 24 hours before that meeting. I don't want my colleagues to be looking at a plan the same time the media is looking at it. So I will make sure that gets communicated. Now, he obviously is working on a very tight time frame. To ask for it much further in advance of that would be, I think, probably challenging, but I will, and Marisol will make sure that we communicate that to him, and I see 2 of his deputies out there. I'm sure they will communicate that to him as well. So 24 hours in advance would be a good look for the board. But again, to Vice President Elliott's point, I think when we have our meetings, the board has sort of reorganized how we approach meetings. We now look at these resolutions in advance as a team. And I think when we consider these resolutions, we should be looking at it perhaps item by item. I think the question was a good one on this one. You got a current chef? Do you really need another one? But I think from my perspective, you make a good argument. Sometimes we don't do succession planning. And this is a particularly difficult field to identify someone. Plus, he's already employed in the district. So, Commissioner Davis?
But to have,
What I was going to
I'm
also
sorry.
just follow up on that was that even now that you were considering expanding it, we have to look at budget
Absolutely,
considerations.
absolutely,
So maybe a good program. Just like, Commissioner LeBron talked about the ELA and the bus and the transportation from that being cut. I mean, we really have to keep in the back of our mind, is this within the limitations of our budget? Can we afford to do it, even when they may be good programs?
Right.
Commissioner Davis, are you going to?
My question is, it seems like 411 and 424 go together. Can we understand how they go together?
Just to formalize that conversation, can I get, without having resolved, well, why don't we, do you think they go together?
It's the same person,
Yeah,
411 and 424.
Hold on one second. Give me 1 second to take a look. Without calling for a discussion on 424, could you describe for us the relationship between those 2 resolutions, Dr. Nellis?
If I'm reading this correctly, it looks like 411 is to appoint to probationary period. And I don't know why they're choosing for resolutions. Colleen, know why they're choosing for resolutions?
We've worked with the legal department.
Colleen, you have to, thank you.
I'll see Harry there.
This was our first time in working with a CTE position, and we worked closely with HR and with our legal department as far as how to submit the resolutions, and this is how we were told to do it. If there's anything that needs to be corrected, I'd be happy to do that. And I know Steve's here, and also Harry's not here, but we'd be happy to do whatever it takes if there's any changes that have to be made. But that was our understanding how to submit it.
Commissioner LeBron?
Can you clarify what you mean by CTE? Because it doesn't, what the
sorry.
resolution,
Career and technical education. It's
I know.
There's a
We'll say it again, career.
And technical education.
Okay, so resolved that upon the recommendation, I won't read the person's name, but what I'll say is that it just says resolved upon the recommendation of the EPO superintendent pursuant to education law 211E3, the persons listed below is assigned to serve at East High School. It doesn't mention CTE, it doesn't mention any cost or salary.
Well, so the teacher certification, it wouldn't designate CTE, it's in the program itself. I'm not certain why they,
Worded it this way?
That
What
way,
does it
no, I'm
mean?
So can we table it until?
Mr.
we
President?
can table it.
Is
Yes,
that okay?
okay. Go
I
ahead.
think the answer lies in something that Dr. Nelms already told us, that this individual has been serving as an assistant teacher. Resolution 424 lists him as a teacher. So this is probably, this second resolution is probably to change his status from assistant teacher to a teacher status, as opposed to the appointment of a probationary, which is a different function.
There is a different
right.
means to appoint an individual to a CTE position than what there is to a regular teaching position. And the state has certain steps that our teachers or any teachers within RCSD has to go through in order to fulfill those requirements. One is to promise the individual a position at our school. So we actually had to say, yes, we have a position for him. Otherwise, it could not go through underneath state approval. He had to actually submit his paperwork into the state. The state would then say, everything is in order, now we need to have a school commit to you. We are at the point now where everything has gone through the state, and we now have to commit to him. And to Commissioner Davis's and Commissioner Powell's point, this was an open FTE position that it's been vacant for over a year.
So if the board is uncomfortable with the two resolutions, then we can table it and move to another.
I make a motion to table.
Is there
I'm
a
sorry,
motion?
can I jump in? You don't even have a motion on the table to consider, so you can't have a motion
Well, no,
to
we
table.
do
We did a
have
motion for
411. We have 411.
So we were trying to see if we can combine.
Yeah, I think
so-
without Harry or HR person here, I probably feel more comfortable.
Hold on. Steve, you're standing up. Do you have something to offer on this?
I mean, 411 is the correct resolution, definitely. I think 424 is part of the legacy that there was for a while always a duplicate, like there would be, you do the regular appointment like you're used to seeing, that's what 411 is.
Right.
424 is, for some reason, it was done this way, and I don't know if it still is without Harry here or somebody.
We have to table.
But 411 is the correct resolution. That one should definitely, I would suggest, go forward. 424 is kind of a backup, just saying, and they're assigned to East. I think people think it needed to be done pursuant to the EPO law. I don't know if I'm not prepared to offer a comment on that at the moment, but 411 is properly done, as Carleen indicated. She worked with us on this. That's proper.
So right now, there is a motion to table. Is there a second? I second it.
Oh, but Van, I'm sorry, before you continue with this, like, we did a motion for 411, our Marisol X, who motioned it and who seconded. So Commissioner Powell motioned it. I know I seconded it, but she didn't know that, so she didn't know we had a motion. Then it was for 411.
No, it's not, 424
We
never
never
got
did
on the table.
424.
So there has been a motion
Right.
and a second, and the motion to
That's what I
table
want
goes
to
directly,
clarify.
goes directly to a vote. So there's been a motion and a second, or motion to table, it goes directly, and all we're
Wait,
talking
we're
about,
motioning to table which one? Because,
only 411. Only
Okay.
411 is before the
oh, no,
body.
I want to pass 411.
All right. Only 411 is before the body. All those in favor of tabling resolution 411, say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay?
Is that the-
So then it does not pass because you have, looks like 3 to 3.
Well, I think there's just need to be some clarification because we did make the motion a second on 411, but then I think Commissioner Davis
Bless you.
wanted to know how 424
Well-
connected with 411. And so I think what we wanted to do was to table 424. That's what we wanted
Well,
to
you
do.
can't table 424 because it's not before the body.
Okay, so we can vote on.
So that one, 411, the motion to table has been denied.
So we vote on it.
Well, now we vote on 411. Okay? Any further questions or comments regarding resolution 411? There are no, yes, ma'am.
The discussion started with expanding the program and the budget implications that we need to be aware of. I just want to throw out there that I'm actually okay with expanding programs if we think that they're going to be beneficial to students. But then whose job would it be to make sure that we have the money and where we will be taking it from, I think would land on you, Superintendent Nelms, and your team before it actually comes before a resolution, so that there's kind of another check. Because I'm going to be relying on you and your team's expertise and what you think is good for the student body if you want to expand, and that's for any school. If you want to expand, but then there's going to be implications somewhere else, so make sure that you're pulling from somewhere else.
Yes, and this position, thank you. This position was already budgeted going into the year. We were waiting for him to get his certification completed with the state. And it took him a while to do that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments regarding resolution 411? There being no further questions or comments, all those in favor of resolution 411 say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? It's like the ayes have it. All right, so let me go back to my blue agenda, and now we need a motion to discuss resolution 424.
And I looked up this, another one. In the yellow, there's a 412.
Yeah.
You mean 412?
No. I meant 424 because that's what I'm reading on the calendar. I don't.
Never voted on 412.
What's that?
That's because it's,
As I say, the
because
list
it's
is
not
yellow
on the
listed.
agenda.
Yeah. No. What you all are misunderstanding is I am going by this sheet, and I have wait. I have said to staff before, please make sure, because that's what I've done in the past. I rely on this sheet to follow. So let's make sure that we accurately portray on this sheet, because I'm not looking at this stuff. Okay. So I appreciate my colleagues identifying the yellow sheets that say 411. I see that, Commissioner LeBron. Thank you. Appreciate that. Commissioner Powell?
as pertains to 412, I would ask that we do it and go to executive session in any event.
All right, so we'll skip over 412 for now, and we'll get a motion from Commissioner Powell in a few minutes, because it doesn't seem like it's going to take that long, to go into executive session on 412. Looks like we have to do it on 428 as well. So it'll be in good company. So back to 424. Is there a motion to discuss resolution 424?
So moved.
Motion to table.
Oh, we got to get it on the
Get on the
table.
table.
Okay.
So moved.
Sorry. Commissioner Powell has made that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Vice President Elliott. Any questions or comments? If you will, just indulge my colleagues, because you know a motion to table goes directly to a vote. So I just want to make sure people have an opportunity, if you don't mind. Are any questions or comments regarding 424? Nope. Oh, yep, there is.
I was just gonna say, I just looked up really quickly what this law was talking about. Now,
Okay.
I know we're gonna table it, but I think that it came out of order from 411 and 424, that this one probably should have been considered first and then assigned the salaries, so, but I know we're gonna table it, but I just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so it looks like there is going to be a motion to table, hint, hint. You ready?
Motion to table.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Second by Commissioner LeBron. Motion to table goes directly to a vote. All those in favor of tabling, let's see, resolution 424. Let's give a date certain. Madam Clerk, can you give me a date for the next time we could consider this? Can you give me a date? Tuesday the 12th. 12? Sean, will you be ready to provide some?
I can do whatever the board requests.
That sounds like the 12th then. So Commissioner Davis has made a motion, which was seconded by Vice President Elliott, to table Resolution 424. LeBron, I'm sorry, to the 12th, is that right? Tuesday the 12th. Can I get a vote? All those in favor of tabling Resolution 424 to the 12th, a date certain, say aye. Aye. Any?
Nay.
There's one nay. Looks like the ayes have it. All right, next so you'll be set on ready for us on the 12th?
I will be ready for you.
Thank you,
I'm
Dr.
just
Nelms.
texting the team now.
All right. Next is, I need a motion to discuss Resolution 525. 425, thank you.
But it's not the same thing on the resolution page.
So
Those are
moved.
authorizations to pay. 425 on the yellow sheet is authorization to pay, not grant tender.
I'm just looking at something that my colleague has said. Yeah, so we really need to be, enough said.
Yeah.
425. Is there a motion?
I moved it.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Is there a second?
Second.
By Vice
Thank you.
President Elliott. Any questions or comments regarding Resolution 425?
Yeah, Van.
Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to put this out there, and this is actually not specifically to East, but I want to throw it out there. Last time I had the conversation around renaming the budget code so that it's the budget name as it matches our finance report, so that we have some clarity. The other thing I realized is that even though sometimes the budget codes are the same budget codes, the spending amount and what the balance is typically different, and the explanation is that different people are pulling or creating these resolutions at different times, so that amount changes or fluctuates because people have spent money, and by the time, I wrote it and you write it, it might be a different amount. I'm gonna start requesting, I would like to request that we have dates on these, so that if I created this resolution on this date, this was how much was in there, and that someone else created another resolution, and when they certified the budget line, because the certified budget line balance is supposed to be there so that we understand how much money is in that specific line and how much is being spent. And we're not going to be able to see that picture without understanding the date that people are creating these resolutions and certifying, quote unquote, how much is in there. And we have seen these same budget code lines with different amounts, and the explanation's always that everyone's creating these resolutions on different dates. So I want to throw that out there. So again, not just to East, but I did have a conversation with Terry. I want to bring it up here as well. I think that will help us know what date someone certified that amount and whether that number is different from the same date or different date.
So Commissioner LeBron, to make sure I'm clear on this, and it's probably more important that the administration understand what we're talking about here. So for example, on page 9 of the yellow sheet, you're proposing that our new approach to this include a date that that number of $107,000?
Yes.
Is that what you're proposing?
Yeah, so yes. And let me just go to, you see on page 6, 425A and 425B are like being drawn from the same line. But in your explanation, 9 is where the certified budget line is. So we're saying that the certified budget line here is 107,000, but we're going to be spending 11,000, 29,000, and then the total is 41,000 of that amount. Somewhere along that, there should be a date so that if we get another resolution with that exact budget code, even though I've asked for that budget code to be switched to budget names, the budget line item names, yeah, there needs to be a date, because we're seeing resolutions, multiple resolutions, and East is a very small packet, so let me just throw this out there. We can figure this out with just a few pages. But when we have our the regular school district, where it's all of the schools or all of the programs, and we have a thicker packet, there should be a date of when these resolutions were created and who certified that line and what date that was.
Yeah, I think it becomes more difficult with the district's resolution packet, because the numbers can be all over the place in one given yellow packet. So we have our two deputy superintendents there listening. We'll have some additional conversation. I don't know how this might work. Like, for example, if I look at pages 6 through 9, it is clear when they write certified budget line balance, see below, and they repeat that for A and B, and then they do the totaling. They are giving us a real-time understanding of what's happening to that budget line. But,
Except we
as you
don't know what
say-
date.
Well, I'm assuming that they're certifying this for the board meeting of November the 7th. But to your point, on a broader, larger packet, the budget line could be in a number of different places. So I get that, but I see what they're doing here. It is an attempt to do a running count. You got multiple resolutions, and they're saying, see below. But again, we got our deputies here. No need to argue the point. I think that it needs examination, and it wouldn't hurt to put a date on there because this is a resolution packet dated for this meeting. I look at that to mean that for this meeting, that's what they're certifying on November the 7th. That's what you all are certifying. But nothing would be wrong with doing a timestamp on it. So when Joe Schmo certified this on this particular date, November the 5th, this is what was in it. I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah.
So you'll talk that over with your boss, and we'll see how that goes. By the way, the administration's been very good at this whole process, modifying it. This is a board initiative, and I think it's working well. And each time we have a meeting, we're figuring out maybe we need to tweak it a little bit, and I think this is a reasonable suggestion. Okay. Yes, Commissioner Shepherd?
Yeah, so I actually don't have any issues or quarrels against like any of my colleagues wanting anything added in these things to help, it flow easier. One thing that I have noticed though, and I don't know if this actually is necessary for the board to do a policy or if it's for the administration to work on processes, but I have noticed that if resolutions come out of order, then whenever the budget date line was certified, it would be all over the place. And so I don't know if there is a way to streamline that process. I shouldn't say if I don't know if there's a way. There is a way. And I would like for the administration to think about a process change in regards to when we do get resolutions and the date that the budget line was certified, that it all makes sense and it flows in our head regardless on if a date was there or not. So I know that the last discrepancy, just as an example, was one where the budget lines did not match up, but I know Dr. Golden, you said that there was money that was pulled at some other time when we approved another resolution, and so it should go in chronological order if we're talking about math, or the finance report should also be attached to the resolution where it would make sense and we can see where the dollars are and have went.
Commissioner LeBron?
So to Commissioner Shepherd's point, I think that's why I'm requesting that example right there. So again, not East, because I can look at East and they're all compiled into 2 pages. But when our packets are much larger, lots of schools, and you have to look at these very long budget code numbers, which on the minuscule level means absolutely nothing to this board because we're not in these accounting code numbers looking at these numbers every day. So we really, they could throw anything on there for all we know. But what I will say is whether it's presented in chronological order or date order, at least if I know the date that, so-and-so wrote this resolution the first week of November, and then so-and-so drew up another resolution at the end of November, and the 2 budget codes are different, or the budget codes are the same, but the budget code balance are different, then at least I can understand that there's some correlation because of the dates, why there's a difference in that. But trying to figure out the budget code and remember where the budget code is and then go 10 pages later and see the same budget code with a drastically different amount, I don't think that does any of us any good in terms of trying to get a better grasp of how we're spending money, so.
Yeah,
That's why I've asked for the
to
date.
Commissioner Shepherd's point, again, not that I disagree with what Commissioner LeBron has said put the date on there, that the date that the person actually certified it. But for the convenience of the board that has to look at this stuff and for efficiency's sake, I think if you can figure out a way, and the operative phrase is if you can figure out a way to do what Commissioner Shepard has suggested, and it might be difficult because, you know, when they put these things together, they're doing it topically in terms of departments, perhaps. But the question is, I would put it more of a question, is it possible to do what Commissioner Shepard has suggested, which is to do sort of, if you look at pages 6 through 11, it's sort of a running tally. And they say, East has said, look at page 11, basically. We're not certifying resolution 4 something A. Look, if you want to know what the certification is, look at 2 pages down at page 11. If there is a way to sort of do a running tally so that we could, and again, I'm not sure if you can. I imagine it would be difficult because I think these things are structured by department, but try to figure that out because I think that would not only make it easier for us, but for anybody interested, and for those of you who are living under a rock and you don't know why we would make this very challenging request, because the narrative is that we're not really watching our bank account, that we're just spending this money and we're not. So it may be challenging for you all to do this. I don't know, but I think this is a reasonable request and it makes sense. And again, East has it a lot easier because they have like 6 to 10 pages. But by way of example, they have shown us how to do it, really. So I want to support what Commissioner Shepard is saying because I think it would be a lot easier if we could do it that way. But let us know, right? And again, I want to thank everyone from board members to staff to the administration. This is a good approach. It's a board initiated approach, and we're perfecting it. You know, it's one thing to say, okay, keep a running tally of your money, but we are every meeting, and I appreciate the administration's response. It's very gracious, very patient, and each time we've made a request to tweak it, you all have done it, and I think it'll make it for the better, and I think this last suggestion will be in that same vein. So, any other, yes, Commissioner Shepard?
And sorry, just one more point too. Because we constantly are getting packet after packet, I do want to know that if we did run out of money in a budget line, if you can then put in a resolution or explain at that point or let us know in a memo or something that if we had to put money back into that budget line from somewhere else to cover a resolution. And I don't know if that happens in the Finance Committee. That would happen in the Finance Committee meeting, right? That we would know that if we had reached zero in a budget line in 1 month and next month we're using that same budget line and we pulled money from somewhere else, we would need to know we had to put money back in there.
Because we use the Finance Committee time to review resolutions, yes, that any concerns of that nature would come out during the Finance Committee meeting, and someone with the very least would have to be able to verbally explain whether, like, for instance, in most cases, funds are moved within a larger fund, like moved from one sub-fund to another, but in the event that you had like real overages, that's exactly what the board needs to be hearing about rather than finding out months after the fact, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yes, Commissioner LeBron?
So, but that's not what has happened, so I'm just wondering, I mean, I know you're requesting that we do that, but what is going to be this board's response to the fact that even according to the Rick Timms report, we had all of these accounts and numbers that, you know, accounts that was holding money and were budgeted, but there was no real place for them to be budgeted or no purpose for them to be there. Like, I don't think we have I don't feel like we have a grasp on that piece yet, on how money is being moved from one line to the other behind the scenes. And I know that we're still waiting for the state audit to kind of give us some feedback on that. So I hear what you're saying to make that request. I would love for them to do that. I don't know if we're going to get that yet, but it's good to have it out there. But that was part of Dr. Rick Timms' report, that we were transferring money line by line.
Commissioner Powell?
Right. And as Commissioner Shepard said at our policy committee meeting, the goal is to craft a policy that will address that. We're kind of waiting for new personnel in our budget and accounting office, and as soon as someone has been identified to the board, then as the chair, I'm happy to meet with that new individual, and we'll start crafting the language, a template of language that we can bring to both the policy committee and the finance committee for consideration.
I would also note, and you sort of implied it, we are not, and I understand the spirit in which Commissioner LeBron stated it, but we are not waiting for the comptroller to come and tell us what to do. And in fact, in my meeting with them, they said, hey, listen, we're expecting you guys, we're going to help out, but we're expecting you guys to come up with your own policies and practices. So sure, they are going to have some recommendations, but hopefully not in this area, because hopefully we would have done what we need to do. I know Terry is working diligently on identifying, I think you all got an email, a confidential email, about personnel issues in that department. But I know Terry, even without having an executive in that position, is working diligently to create the kind of processes to make sure that the stuff referred to in the TIMS report is addressed by this board. And by the way, we're doing it too. Just the discussion we're having tonight, which some might say, well, geez, this meeting could end a lot sooner. No doubt I will not break Vice President Elliott's record, but these are important conversations because it's us being part of the solution. So, and hopefully when they come up with that report, they will say, oh yeah, you're already doing that. Because if we wait for them, we will be in even deeper trouble. Yes, Commissioner.
So I have a question. So
Davis.
even now, the numbers that we're seeing for the Certaline budget, they're positive numbers, but it could be that we did go to zero and something was already moved, but we're not going to be able to tell because it's not a negative number or there's nothing in parentheses that says we moved this from someplace else. So I'd like verification as of the state that no lines for 1920 have gone zero and money's been moved from someplace else. I'd like a certification for that.
Let's put that in the question law, because I think that may require some follow-up. But I think that comment and other comments are important. There is a gap here, and there's a concern here about us having budget lines or someone certifying the money's there, but we don't know how the money got there. Did it go to zero? And because this was part of the problem, is we sort of understand it, somebody moved money to that line. So we got our two deputies sitting there. You're taking notes. I think there's been a proposal in terms of how to change this to reflect a running total, but there's also the issue of how do we know that the money that is certified there didn't get shifted there right before the person certified that the money was there? And you know, no one's being negative, but that's apparently what had been happening. So before the comptroller comes up with his report, how are we as a board going to be certain that we have processes in place to make sure that that kind of thing does not happen? We don't have the answer for it right here, but we're relying on you to come up, as you have in the past, come up with some procedural mechanism so we can file that. I don't think we're there just yet, but this is good work. All right. Let's see, did we vote on that 420, or was it 425? No, I don't think so. All right, any further questions? Yes. Yeah, I think that's a mistake. It says that on the blue sheet, it says 425 grant tenure and 425 additional pay. 425 is just additional pay. Right? All right, so thank you, Vice President Elliott. So any other questions on the additional pay resolutions entitled 425? There being no further questions or comments? Yes, ma'am. What's that? Yeah, that's the only, no, that's the only one. Again, any questions or comments regarding resolution 425? Nope. There being no further questions or comments, all those in favor of additional pay resolutions 425 say aye. Aye. Any opposition?
No.
I hear 2 noes. Commissioner LeBron and Vice President Elliott.
Even though I'm seconded by.
No, that's all right. No, that's all right. You can do that. You can do that.
Stuff over here.
You can do that. That's okay. It looks like the ayes have it.
I'm feeling real good now.
I still feel good. Half good.
Next, I need a motion to discuss Resolution 426. Is there a motion by Commissioner LeBron, seconded by
I'll second.
Vice President Elliott? Any questions or comments regarding Resolution 426?
Yeah, I do, Mr. Superintendent. How has this program been effective? This is 426?
Yeah, I think it's the
Yes.
RCSD resolution. Yeah.
Oh, this is, I'm sorry, it's not, it's for the district, it's not for the
Yeah.
school. Okay, I'm sorry, okay.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
This is year 2 of a grant that we were awarded by New York State for our Disconnected Youth Grant, and it's actually a study. So Albany School District and Rochester City School District were selected for this, in which they're looking to see the effectiveness of intensive case management for individuals who have disconnected or began to disconnect from the educational experience, ages 14 to 24. So when we ended last year and the evaluators reviewed our data and interviewed some of the participants, our program received, I believe, right off the back, maybe 81% effectiveness. We met about 9 out of 10 of the benchmarks with engaging the youth in either GED, paying for them to get work experiences and certification, to be able to go to work or to re-engage them back into regular high school.
So this program doesn't necessarily try to help them to to find homes. You just work with them even though they're still homeless.
Yeah, so
This grant.
no, that's a great question. So it does actually, because Center for Youth has transitional housing.
Okay.
So if they are homeless or who are couch surfing, which is a legal definition of homelessness, they have opportunities to participate in the transitional housing or work with DHS to get the funds that they need to get them started in their own housing.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Yes, Commissioner Powell?
can you tell us how many students are involved, and are some of them in the second year, or do they stay in the program until their condition is resolved and then they drop out of the study? Can you
Yep.
tell?
Yeah, so the way the study works is that some of the participants will get direct intensive case managements, others will be referrals only. So that's how they kind of check the effectiveness of the intensive case management. So those who get the intensive case management are involved until they either graduate or reach their goals. If not, they can be there for 18 months.
Okay, and how many students were served last year?
I believe we served 79 through the intensive case management piece, and then I forget the numbers of those who were only referrals only.
Okay, and how many this year? Are students?
This year, our goal is 120 total.
Okay, so the system isn't designed to expand infinitely.
No, because the idea is for those who are receiving intensive case management, the caseload has to be fairly small.
Right. So are new students added when an opening becomes available?
Yep, yep, and we receive referrals from multiple referral source.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments regarding Resolution 426? There being no further questions or comments, all those in favor of Resolution 426 say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
No for me.
Okay, all right. So that would leave us to Resolution 427. Is there a motion to discuss Resolution 427?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Is there a second? Oh, come on. Somebody help me out. Oh, thank you, Commissioner. Okay. All right, there's been a motion and a second. Any questions or comments regarding Resolution 427?
Yeah, Mr. President,
Yes,
just
ma'am.
that I see that this is a grant. What I don't want to have happen, when does the grant expire? When is there no longer a grant? Because what I don't want to have happen is that, you know, this money comes out of general funds, and particularly with the fact that we are, here again, you know, in a financial crisis, that we end up having to do this program with general funds, and I don't want that to happen. So how long is this grant, and when does it end?
This is a 5-year federal grant, flow through the state, and this is the second year.
All right, thank you.
Van?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I just give kudos, though, really quickly to ACES? I was training someone from Somali today, and we were doing some outreach, but she was talking to me about her experience at Oasis and that she had tried to go to BOCES and did not feel that they were teaching her English and getting her prepared for work in the medical. And so she was going to be coming back to Oasis, and she asked me, do you know Oasis? I'm like, she doesn't know I'm on the board. I'm like, yeah, I know Oasis. Like, I know it's a wonderful program, but I just want to give you guys kudos for that, because this is a young lady that has been here for 2 years. I thought her English was immaculate for 2 years being here. She's not feeling as confident, but we had some conversations, but she learned English with you guys, and also did some career work with you guys, and is trying to break into the medical field. And so we've taken her on as an intern at Rochester Regional. So I just want to give you guys kudos for that work. So,
Thank you.
Any other questions? All
I
right.
have one question.
Yes.
Are there more agencies that provide the career training, employment assistance, et cetera? Is Literacy Volunteers the best agency?
This request for a subcontract in front of the board tonight is actually to support a contract with Literacy Volunteers of Rochester. The executive director, Charles Reeves, is sitting in the audience tonight. We've had a 30-year collaboration with them. They're kind of the sister agency in New York State to adult and career education. Literacy Volunteers of Rochester serves a region, including the city. With this particular request for a subcontract, what we're doing is trying to bring an initiative that they call Digital Navigator to scale. It's something that we started in the prior 5-year funding stream with them from concept, where they actually identify volunteers, train those volunteers, and support and schedule those volunteers. Initially, in the first 5-year cycle, it was only in 3 libraries. With this particular grant, because we used this model in the request in this current 5-year cycle, and were awarded 400 times more grant funds to do this. We're trying to bring it to scale, and currently they are now providing volunteers, digital navigators in every library in the city, and at 4 of the 5 Oasis locations across the city.
Do you know how many you served and how many you expect to serve now?
We target 600, but actually last year, Literacy Volunteers of Rochester served closer to 1,200 people in their initiative.
So define Greater Rochester area. Does that mean the region?
Literacy Volunteers is a regional service provider. However, we're focusing only on city residents and city locations with this initiative.
Okay, now this resolution though says the Greater Rochester area. So that can be interpreted to mean the region, so, or the county. And so is it exclusive, I shouldn't use that term, but it is primarily for the citizens of Rochester?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so that's not how it's reading, so that's why I was questioning, because that Greater Rochester is used far more broader in this community. So that's why I wanted to make sure I understood who's participating in this. Because I'm not necessarily wanting to do the county of Monroe necessarily. I want this to be focusing on the city of Rochester. So when you use the term Greater Rochester, and you mentioned that this program is broad-based, it reaches more than just Rochester, correct?
Literacy Volunteers of Rochester does focus on the region.
Okay, so but this program is specifically for the citizens for the city of Rochester?
Yes. What we're doing with this subcontract is expanding their digital navigator services within the city limits.
Because the key thing for me is that I'm a little sensitive because we got a couple of schools here who have, the programs don't necessarily work in behalf of people of color who are in these programs. A lot of white students are in these particular programs. And so in this case, I don't want there to be a lot of county folk that are part of this program, and our city folk are excluded from it. That's my concern. So when I see the term, I have to question when I see the term Greater Rochester. And then if the program is a program that reaches the county or reaches the region, I just want to make sure that the primary focus of this program is for, and if the city, if the school district seemingly is the fiduciary oversight for it, I just want to make sure that the people in this community is able to take advantage of this primarily.
Mr. President, could
Commissioner
I
Powell?
offer up a solution to the problem that?
No, it's not necessary. I just want to make it clear.
Well, I think the best way to make it clear is to offer up an amendment, because this is in the resolve clause. Might I offer that up now to replace the phrase Greater Rochester area with the phrase City of Rochester? Adult learners in the City of Rochester. Because the resolved paragraph basically is the authorization. And so leaving it broad, such as Greater Rochester area, although we don't want to catch ourselves in a position where the grant pays for adult ed learners who live in the city, but we inadvertently open the door to everyone who can take a bus into the city. So I offer up that amendment if anyone's willing to second it.
Second.
Okay, there is an amendment on the floor relating to Resolution 427 as described by Commissioner Powell to provide greater specificity with respect to who the adult learners will be, specifically that they will be only city residents.
No, we're going to say the City of Rochester.
City of Rochester residents. All those in favor of the amendment as I've just described, say aye. Aye. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I know it's a small language change, but with the language change, is it going to impact the agreement? Like, does it have to have that specific language for the grant?
We're encouraged to provide services at a regional scale if possible. However, with this particular project, we focused exclusively on city libraries in the 4 of the 5 physical locations that OASIS has within the city limits. So of the 1,200 people served last year, if 1% of those were not city residents, I would be surprised.
Any other questions regarding the amendment? Yeah, go ahead.
But so you're saying that it's okay to change the language? I just want to be clear. I'm okay with changing the language. I just don't want it to impact the grant.
The amendment is reasonable. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions regarding the amendment, proposed amendment? All those in favor of the amendment as I've described, or as Commissioner Powell described, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, so the Resolution 427 has been amended. Any questions or comments respecting Resolution 427 as amended? There being no further questions or comments, all those in favor of Resolution 427 as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? The ayes have it. All right, so I'm going to skip 428 because there's going to be a motion to go into executive session regarding that. As I know there's going to be a request to go into executive session regarding 412. That would leave us with 429. Can I get a motion to discuss Resolution 429?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Any questions or comments regarding the board self-evaluation tool, which we discussed in our agenda review a couple of days ago? Doesn't mean that, folks can't have comment on it now. I will note that one of the things that we all agreed on, that this was just a sort of a boilerplate form for us to build upon. There's going to be a lot of work done on this before it ultimately becomes the board's evaluation tool. And our staff and administration are going to help us tweak it. Any comments or questions regarding Resolution 429?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So I know it's on a resolution probably to come for a vote tonight, but I won't be supporting this particular tool because there's a section in it, well, each section has a rubric that we grade ourselves like 1 through 4. And the problem that I have with that is if everybody's all over, like it's too broad of a scale to really pinpoint. And if we all have different aspects of how it is that we think we're doing, I don't think it's going to help us get to a good solution. So this particular tool, I'm not supporting.
So and not disagreeing with that, but my expectation is that this thing may change, that there may be some modification of how we're evaluated or the grade scale that we're evaluated, because this may not work. So I anticipate that, a year from now, this may be modified somewhat. I think the understanding that we are making today by voting on this is a general framework will work. I could see us maybe modifying the grading scale. So, but in any event. Any other questions or comments regarding Resolution 429? There being no further questions or comments, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? No. I heard
No.
2 noes. All right. Seems the ayes have it. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business, and there is none. Don't worry, I am going to get to the executive session stuff. New business, this may be new business or a point of personal privilege. I want to acknowledge Steve Ubing, a good friend to the district, and the University of Rochester is a good partner. Hey, Steve, how you doing? I did happen to see a tweet regarding East High School and them going into the championship, which Sean apparently referred to before I got here, and someone sort of indirectly questioned Steve's allegiance. Because, Steve used to be the, I think, the superintendent out in Canandaigua, is that right?
Yeah.
And Steve, his tweet was, "Go East." So I don't think there's any question about, and Sean talked about it, but I will be, about an hour and a half drive? How far is that?
20 minutes, right?
To Geneva.
Hobart?
To Hobart.
Hobart. How far is it? An hour. So I hope, too far. But not far enough for this championship. So congratulations to East for making it this far. We'll be praying for you. Additionally, I just wanted to recognize the Wilson Wildcats, who apparently made it to the quarterfinals. They did us proud, and to the family and friends and coaches and staff that support them, as well as our East Eagles. The Board of Education says thank you. And I also, since we're congratulating people, I wanted to congratulate Commissioner LeBron, Ms. Malloy, Mr. Adams, and Commissioner Powell on their recent victory. These things are never easy to do. You put yourself out there to have people evaluate you and your ideas. It takes great courage, but not as much as courage as it takes, as we all know, to be up here. So we appreciate the effort to put yourselves forth before voters, but we really appreciate the work that you have done or that you're about to do for this district. Any other, since we're doing points of personal privilege, and since Commissioner Vice President Elliott wants to keep her record intact, I'm gonna help her do that because it's 7:44.
Yeah, let me just.
So go ahead, Vice President Elliott.
Yeah, I just wanted to just thank those who recognize the school board, my colleagues for School Board Recognition Week. And in particular, I want to thank the Rochester International Academy for giving us cards. And Commissioner Powell, I found out why my packet was much bigger than the rest of you all's packet, because I am the liaison. So I get the packet. And I also want to point out that on one of the cards, one of the students did my hair. So they gave me this big hair, and so I just want to give a shout out to them. I'm coming to see them tomorrow on my first school visit for the year, and I look forward to it. And also, I don't know, I can't remember the date on it, but they always have a Thanksgiving event on a Saturday. So make sure you all come in to visit that Thanksgiving event. So shout out to Rhea.
They use
right.
peas and macaroni.
Commissioner LeBron?
Yeah.
I forgot
So,
about that. I forgot about that.
Just a couple of things. Tomorrow, the Rochester City School District has their STEAM fair. We were all emailed. I'm going to go for a little bit. I know it's from 9 to 1:30 at Franklin and Liberty Polway, where the old MCC, what I consider the old Damon City campus, which is no longer there, but that is where it's going to be. Also, the HBCU fair, the last day for parents to register is tomorrow. So I know I've been promoting it on my social media, but I just want to throw it out here. So, because tomorrow's the last day for 11th and 12th graders and parents to register, they can go to the Rochester City School District website. There is a link on there to register. It is free, and we pay for the lunches. As you guys know, we passed that resolution for that. And then, on another note, I do want to also acknowledge Officer Manuel Ortiz with the Rochester Police Department. As many people know in this community, everybody is mourning his loss right now. Tomorrow, there is a community wake at the Riverside Convention Center at 11 a.m. It's public and open to anyone to pay their last respects. I did reach out to Terry to talk to him about potentially him and his team and us doing something in honor of Manny Ortiz, potentially for next month, because I do realize that, you know, we have a lot going on right now and that his focus needs to be November 12th. But I just wanted to throw that out there and obviously pay my respects to his family, but also let this community know and the board that the wake is tomorrow at 11 a.m. right up the street if you guys are able to. And I'm going to probably catch an Uber from here if anybody wants to catch one with me. So just throwing that out there.
Commissioner Powell?
Yeah, as you recall, last month during our short meeting, I gave a little presentation on something I found in our archives. I wanted to do something for tonight, but hit a snag regarding sort of just a pictorial display of our past student representatives. I'll have to find another way to pull that off in another time. But I also, in reading past board minutes, which I do in my copious spare time, I discovered that in some decades past, the board would authorize to have certain documents become part of the official record. That's an activity that I think has fallen into disuse, and I'd like the board's permission to compile a packet of correspondence for this calendar year, starting with correspondence back and forth from City Hall and the district around the budget and the referendum, correspondence to and from the State Education Department regarding the DE's report, not the DE report itself because that's already public, and also the court briefings both from the city and the school district around the referendum. They should be part of the public record, and they should be packaged in a way that anyone can find them. So I'd like to see that a packet assembled before this calendar year is out, with your blessings.
I certainly don't have any objection to that. Anybody?
Actually,
Commissioner LeBron?
I would support it too. I would just want us to have some legal counsel around any of it. I feel like anything we email is foilable anyway. Fully aware of that, but as long as there's no legal implications that you can think of, I'm okay with it. I think it's actually a great idea. I will give you that.
I'm not actually thinking about emails per se, but a lot of times official letters from the mayor or from city council come to us electronically, but the letter itself is
Not really
a
public.
public document. We just have never put it into our official records. So I'm just looking for a way to assemble them, compile them into some sort of system and file them as part of our official record somehow.
I would support that.
Anybody have any objection to that? Okay, before I go into executive session, I do want to know that staff and I were reviewing where we're at with the action report, district improvement plan, and one of the things we were talking about was that one of our action steps was we were going to have more social events as a board, and we were talking about the ones that we've had in the past. This was Kalia and Marisol and I were talking, and we were just thinking about the events that we've had. And you know, some of the stuff that we do, we don't even log in as social events. Like, for example, when Vice President and I and Commissioner Shepard got stranded in Philadelphia, and we, it wasn't as bad as she looking, and we had to drive.
That 15-hour drive wasn't bad.
Oh, she was just saying I was driving too slow, but don't pay no attention there. But it was a social event. It was a social event. We, Vice President Elliott, she took her liberties at going to sleep a little bit.
Snoring?
She did. But,
and they put me in the front because I was the baby. I didn't have a say in where I could sit. Like, it was awful.
But we had opportunities to talk. So let me make my point, please, so we can finish in the reason why. But on top of that, let me just say, while we did say what happens in Louisville stays in Louisville, no, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. We will
not take him nowhere again.
We did have, I'm not gonna get into the details, don't worry about it, Sean, who said soul food consisted of mac and cheese with peas in it.
I did not say that. I did not say that.
But my point here is, he did, okay, all right, maybe I am saying too much. He did set it right. He took us to this soul food restaurant called Sadie, what is it? Sadie Mae's?
Sally Mae's, yeah.
Sally Mae's.
You had chitlins.
I did. I had chitlins. But
How many people don't know what chitlins is?
No. It is food. It's Grandma White's food. It was delicious. Chitlins with hot sauce. Don't act like y'all don't know what I'm talking about. Carlos is nodding his head. He doesn't. But my point is, just like right now, it was a good social moment. We had a great time. We learned a lot at the Council for Great City Schools. I came across some great ideas, but I thought about our social activities. It was we had a great time, and we learned a lot, but we learned a lot about each other. And I want to thank Vice President Elliott and Dr. Nelms, because we had
we ran into Carl there for a day.
Oh, that's right, we did.
Yeah, Carl was there.
Carl, next time you're gonna have to come to Sally Mae's with us. I'll give you some chitlins.
Don't know.
All right, so
Can I make one comment?
Yes, sir.
I just want to take a dad moment, point of privilege. So I want to say to my daughter, Alexia, they just lost her semifinal game in volleyball, but she did text me and say that she's in good spirits. So I want to say I'm proud of you, girlfriend, and I will see you tonight.
All right. That's good, Dad. Okay, so I need a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing a particular employee and also to discuss a student suspension, long-term suspension. It's been moved by Vice President Elliott, seconded by Commissioner Powell. All those in favor say aye. Aye. For those of you who are real gladiators, we'll adjourn from the second floor downstairs. Good night, everybody. Well, sometimes that works, but the mics.
Oh yeah, we enjoy it. Let me know what you think.
Thank you. We can't take Van nowhere.